Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey, Plato Wyngard and the Armour of the Gods, chapters 5 to 6 by Mark and James Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Chapter 5. Now they knew who the perpetrator was. Plato's local reign of terror was put on hold. If they were going after Malekai, they would be smart in the way they conducted the hunt. So, what have we got? Nott asked as he grabbed a piece of pizza from the center table. A name. Malekai, Luther said. A highly trained soldier and operative used to working with means and funding, Plato added. Now suddenly alone, not only working without the guild, but being hunted by that very institution, Luther said. So what does a man in his position do? Nott asked. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it, Tim? A man like him doesn't just pack up and move to the suburbs. He would know that he's now a wanted man. So what does he do? Plato asked. When a military man is forced to move on, a lot become mercenaries. Plus, he would need a benefactor that won't be pushed around by other competitors. Luther said. That's right. So the real question is who and where? Plato asked. We start with the delivery service, Nott said. Great. Can you chase that lead? Plato asked. What about you? Nott asked. Luther and I are going to visit an old friend of mine, Plato said cryptically. Plato's jeep sped through the tight streets located on the eastern side of town. For the past 30 minutes, Plato's tight-lipped behavior driving Luther crazy. Stuck in traffic caused by an upturned fruit truck, Luther used this as an opportunity to question his friend. Enough! I'm not going anywhere until you tell me where we're going, Luther stated. Patience has never been your strong suit, Plato quipped. And lying to me yours, Luther replied. Plato sighed. Have you ever heard of the Olympic Seven? Plato asked. Luther thought on this a moment. I can't say that I have, Luther said. In mythology, the Olympic spirits were 7 figures in magic who imparted knowledge and power. However, in the intelligence community, they are 7 rogue figures that make up a clandestine organization that sells secrets for a very high price. The 7 are made up of former Israelis, Mossad, Yanks, CIA, Germans, Federal Intelligence Service, Russia's Federal Counterintelligence Service, Chinese Central Investigation Department, Indians, Research and Analysis Wing, and of course the POMS, Secret Intelligence Service. Each member is known only as a call sign. The XMI6 operative is known as Eratron, Plato said. How the hell do you know this? Luther asked. I knew Eratron over 10 years ago when he was an intelligence operative. We worked together on a mission in the Gaza Strip, Plato said. I didn't realize there were British troops in the region, Luther said. And that would be the official statement as well, Plato replied. And now he's a rogue operative, Luther said. That's correct, Plato said. As much as this has been informative and interesting, how is this going to help us? Luther asked. Back in Gaza, I saved Eratron's life, and now he's in town, Plato said. They arrived an hour later outside a simple agricultural supply warehouse. Luther looked skeptical. Don't tell me this spook of yours is here? Luther asked. At the moment, yes. Whatever happens here, don't react. Just follow my lead. I can't stress this enough, Plato said evenly. Fine. I'll be on my best behavior, Luther sulked. This reaction brought the ghost of a smile to Plato's lips. We'll be fine, Plato said. They entered the warehouse and were greeted by a pudgy, bespectacled, middle-aged man dressed in a stained shirt and slacks. He appeared unsurprised at their arrival. "Good day, gentlemen. How may I be of service to you?" the man asked. Plato walked up to the service counter with Luther a few paces behind. "I'm looking for something specific?" Plato asked. "And this item you seek, does it have a name?" the man asked. Plato leaned in close. "I'm looking to gain the secret of invisibility," Plato asked. There was a long pause as the man regarded him. "That's quite the ability," the man said evenly. And then, without warning, they were set upon by a dozen men. Plato and Luther were hooded and restrained, then carried away. Half an hour later, both men sat tied to chairs within a small dark room. Their hoods remained on. "Luther, can you hear me?" Plato said. "Yeah, I can hear you," Luther replied unhappily. "Don't panic. As I said before, follow my lead," Plato instructed. "Got no choice now," Luther grumbled. "Your friend is correct." A cultured English voice joined the conversation, entering the room. "We mean no harm. I have come for help," Plato asked. "I know why you're here, Plato," the voice said, and at the mention of the name the hoods were whipped from their heads. The sudden introduction of light, be it dim, made the pair squint as they tried to evaluate their situation. Before them stood a thin Caucasian man, average height and weight, receding hairline and pale complexion. "Ralph, is that you?" Plato asked. At the mention of the name, the pale man smiled. "Yes, Plato, it's me," Ralph replied. Ralph ordered the two of them cut free. Refreshments were brought, but they were kept within the room, and Plato noted that the guards remained outside the door. "So, what brings the illustrious Plato Wyngard to my neck of the woods?" Ralph asked. "Well, actually, we didn't come to see you, we came to see Aratron," Plato said. "And what makes you think this Aratron resides here?" Ralph asked. Plato's eyes narrowed. "Because Aratron owes me, big time, and I've come to collect," Plato said. "That was a long time ago," Ralph said. "Where I come from, time doesn't matter. A trust was made. And I thought said person would still have a sliver of honor in his." All right, hold up. That person still exists. However, the terms of this may vary on what you ask of me," Ralph said. Plato thought this over. "Seeing as how I'm your captive?" Plato said. "Guest," Ralph corrected. "Guest, then. I'll take whatever you can give me," Plato said. "Then what we have is a gentleman's agreement," Ralph said, and pulled up a chair opposite. "How can I help?" Plato explained everything that had happened concerning the immortals and everything that followed. Ralph was an observant and keen listener. The whole time he never said a single word. After Plato had finished, he sat in silence, his mind ticking over with all the information he had received. "Some of what you have told me I am aware of, but a lot is definitely interesting," Ralph said. "So can you help us?" Luther asked. "Ah, the giant speaks. Yes, Luther Macbeth, I think I can help," Ralph said. "I have heard of this guild of wolves. They make the Illuminate and the Knights Templar seem like the Girl Scouts. Secretive, well-funded, and powerful. Their true objective isn't even known. Most spooks have heard whispers concerning this group, but that is all," Ralph said. "Wonderful. We've come all this way. For info we already know," Luther scoffed. "I think my father was a member," Plato said. "Amazing. I'm surprised you weren't offered membership, as that is usually the way these groups operate. So secretive is their organization that it's passed on to families, usually the oldest sibling," Ralph said. "Maybe. My father passed away when I was young, and like you, I've been off the grid for the better part of a decade, Plato said. Well, in regard to the guild, all I can say is that you should tread carefully, Ralph advised. Too late for that, Luther said with a grin. The reason I advise this is because that's how these societies survive. Absolute silence. About them, their dealings, and usually when someone outside the order has even the smallest inkling of their existence, they disappear, Ralph said. Well, ain't that just great, Luther said. As far as this other thing you ask, I do have something that will help, Ralph said. Malekai, Plato said, and Ralph nodded. That explosion the other day was not typical, even for this region, and out of curiosity I investigated, Ralph said. You know? Plato asked. I do. Malekai was in town 2 days prior to the explosion and departed that night soon after. He worked alone, which is actually quite impressive. I'm sorry, Plato. That's just me being analytical, Ralph said. Plato nodded. No offense taken. Officials have been bribed, and as of late this morning, the case has been dropped, passed off as nothing more than an unfortunate accident. This was done on the guild's part, I'm guessing despite the fact they're pissed with their former assassin. They want to keep quiet anything he does, Ralph said. This was something I thought might happen, Plato said. Where did he go? Luther asked. Now this is where it really gets interesting, Ralph said. How so? Plato asked. Of all places he could have gone, Malekai chose to go to Ethiopia, Ralph said. Ethiopia, Luther and Plato repeated. What's in Ethiopia? Plato asked. Like most African countries, there is always something going on. But then again, that might be the most ideal place to lay low, Ralph said. Who are the people behind the scenes there? Luther asked. There are many splinter political groups there at present. The biggest threat coming from Somalia. The most prominent name is Mengistu Haile Mariam, a politician and officer for the DIRG, a committee that controls the armed forces and police. The man is on the way to assuming complete control, although he is still a ways off from accomplishing this. Stay clear of him. My only advice would be to head west, towards Sudan. There is still a lot of work for mercenaries on that side of the country. A man such as Malekai might very well head there. I'm sorry that's as much information as I can share, Ralph said apologetically. You've been a great help, Ralph. Consider our debt settled, Plato said warmly and shook the man's hand. My guards will escort you out. Don't come back or try and find me. We'll be gone from here, Ralph said. Take care, Plato said, allowing himself and Luther to be led away. Once outside and behind the wheel of his car, Plato regarded Luther. It's more than I could have hoped for, Plato said. As long as it all pans out, he might have been a friend of yours. But I can't help but distrust those guys, especially when they go rogue. No honor, Luther said with a bitter look. You know what the politicians are like. I think guys like Ralph just lose all faith with government. Going rogue must seem like the only way to gain some semblance of control back, Plato theorized. Maybe so, but I don't think it's right that some clandestine intelligence order should be run by a guy named Ralph, Luther stated. And for the first time in days, both men laughed like old times. Chapter 6. It took 2 days for Plato and Luther to gather supplies and enough armament for their journey. The repairs to the plane's turbine had been fixed days earlier, and with the money made from the sale of the Immortals, they had been to upgrade the C-123 long-range fuel tanks, reinforced plates on vulnerable areas of the plane, as well secret compartments in the interior for stashing weapons. The engine and turbines had also been upsized to allow for better performance. Overall, the Thunder Pig didn't look any different, but she could pretty much deal with any contingency. After charting their course and organizing the correct credentials, the three of them were on their way. They had nearly crossed the Andaman Sea when Plato awoke suddenly from his bunk, a mixture of restlessness and a bad dream. Rubbing his tired face, he wandered into the cockpit to find Luther giving flying lessons to Nat. "And that's how we engage the autopilot," Luther said. "Really, that's it?" Nat replied in surprise. "You're a natural brother," Luther said, leaning back in his chair. Both men turned as they heard Plato enter. "Hey, Plato, can you believe I've been flying for the last half hour?" Nat said enthusiastically. "I can. Luther's an excellent teacher." "When he's sober," Plato said deadpanned. "Nice," Luther muttered. "Where are we?" Plato asked. "We're nearly in Sri Lankan airspace," Luther replied. "Not even halfway," Plato said. "You barely got an hour's sleep?" Nat asked. "Overtired," was all Plato could think to say. Sensing Plato's unease, Luther changed the subject. "So who's our contact in Ethiopia?" Luther asked. "Michael, Thor, Johansson, he's an old friend," Plato said. "Thor?" Nat quizzed. "You'll know why when you see him," Plato said with a smile. "He was in Yemen and Dhofar. His knowledge of the region is excellent." "So what does this Thor do now?" Luther asked. "He works for a private company, Scimitar Industries," Plato said. "What do they do?" Nat asked. K&R, Plato said. "And what's that?" Nat asked. "Kidnap and ransom," Luther interjected. "Mr. Thor is now, for want of a better word, a mercenary." "That's right. He'll meet us when we arrive in Dire Dawa," Plato said. "Taking time out of his busy schedule to help?" Luther asked skeptically. "He owes me a favor. He's simply paying it back," Plato said. "Not that I want to rain on our parade, but we never really discussed what we're going to do once we land," Luther asked. "Thor has been utilizing his network to find out any information on our friend Malekai. I figure a one-eyed white mercenary couldn't be too hard to ferret out in the region," Plato said wistfully. 4 hours later, they arrived at Dire Dawa Airport. The city of Dire Dawa was a small city located on the northwestern side of the country, with a population of nearly 100,000, mainly workers in the surrounding textile factories. They were greeted by a blast of dry heat as they exited the cool interior air of the Thunder Pig. Plato shielded his gaze as he looked around at the thin, plain vegetation of the surrounding region, the sun's glare hot and desolate. "This is not what was in the brochure," Luther complained. "Try and act professional, you big wuss," Plato replied as they stepped down onto the tarmac. Walking towards the concrete terminal, a gruff voice called out. They turned to see a towering individual stride towards them. "Christ, he's bigger than you," Nat said to Luther, who glared back. "How the hell are you, sir?" Thor said, grinning beneath a huge blonde beard. When he reached out to grasp Plato's hand in greeting, he towered over the ex-SAS captain by a foot. Thor was a mountain of solid natural muscle. The sleeves of his heavy khaki shirt rolled up, revealing forearms like tree trunks. Plato winced at the grip. "Can the sir shit, Thor? That was a lifetime ago." "It's good to see you," Plato said. "It's good to see you too. Some things are hard to shake," Thor said. "Thor, these are my associates as well as my good friends, Nat and Luther," Plato said. Thor shook hands again, lingering on Luther for an extended period, the two giants straining as their eyes locked onto each other. Thor, the larger of the two, surprised at the ex-marine's strength. "All right, you two. We're on the same team. Now that you've finished beating your chests, can I get out of this god-awful sun?" Plato said. The two released their grips and nodded out of mutual respect. "Well, at least I know why they call you Thor. You must be at least part god to match Luther's strength," Not said, and they all broke out into laughter. Thor had arranged for them to stay in a hotel located in town for the night. Nothing special, but clean and spacious. After eating a simple meal of meat and vegetables, they retired to the balcony. Thor broke out ice-cold South African beers, which were accepted readily by the others. "I was rather surprised to hear from you after all these years," Thor said, as he took a long swallow of beer. "Not that I'm not glad to see you too, but up until very recently, I had no intention of reacquainting old friendships. At least not like this," Plato said. "So please acquaint me with the story thus far," Thor asked, which Plato did in full. Thor sat silent for a while, nursing his brew. "I am very sorry for your loss. Whatever resources or help I can provide will be at your disposal," Thor said, with genuine sadness. "I appreciate that," Plato said. "Quio de adipiscitur," Thor replied, and the two men clinked their bottles together in toast. "As much as we appreciate your assistance, I'm kind of curious as to how you can help us," Luther asked. Thor regarded him frankly. "I have worked in this region for years. My list of contacts and knowledge of the people and places in and around the Blue Nile is unmatched by any Westerner," Thor said. "Don't take offense. I have the skin of a rhino, you have to be. I'm a white man on the Black Continent. Ethiopia is ready to explode, parties and individuals vying for power. Assassinations have been taking place, and the work of a merc is very busy. As I said before, I owe Plato my life, and if I can repay my debt, I will do whatever it takes," Thor said solemnly. The following morning, Thor took them back out to their plane, which was now housed in a hangar. Parked next to their plane was an ex-military Pinzgauer. The Pinzgauer was a tough, high-mobility, all-terrain vehicle manufactured by Steyr-Daimler Puch of Austria. The vehicle was over 2 meters in height and nearly 5 meters in length. Its most defining feature, its 6 wheelbase. On closer inspection, modifications had been made of a combat nature, armor plate, and mounted 7.62 millimeter machine guns. "I'm impressed," Luther said, running a hand over the reinforced side. "Thank Plato. He wired me the money to purchase this and add the modifications," Thor said proudly. "I call her the Armadillo." "How did you do it in such a short period of time?" Not asked. "This is Africa. Throw enough money, and you can move the world," Thor said casually. Something in this statement annoyed Luther, but he kept the comment to himself. It took them several hours to load up stores from the plane to the Armadillo, and by midday they were on the road. They traveled east. Plato noted as they passed through several villages how poor and defeated the locals looked. "Is it always like this?" Luther asked. "You mean dry and depressing?" Thor replied with a laugh. "What's the problem?" Luther persisted. "It's a bit of everything. Politics, problems on the borders, and of course the lack of water. It's not too bad the closer you get towards the Sudan, though," Thor said. "That's where we're headed, right?" Not asked. "Not right away. We have to stop off at Addis Ababa first," Thor replied. "What's there?" Luther asked. "After Plato's initial call, I looked into anything that even remotely looked like your friend Malekai, and in the past month, someone of his description, has turned up 3 times. Each time in the kidnapping of white foreigners, Thor said. That's all we have? Luther asked. That's 3 times that his descriptions come up. However, the number of kidnappings is closer to 20, Thor said. What ties these all together? How do you know there's a common denominator? Plato asked. Apart from them being female and foreign. Well, initially that was it. But a short time later, after each kidnapping, some of the women would turn up dead. Not all, Thor continued. Was there any? Plato fumbled to find the right words. No mutilation, just executed, bullet to the brain, Thor said. What about the other women? Luther asked. They haven't been found, Thor said. Strange. Is there anything that links the still missing women? Plato pressed. Only that they were fairly young, late teens to late 20s, Thor said. So the very young and older women were killed along with the men? Plato asked. No, as I mentioned before, women in those categories were found killed as well, Thor answered. So what can we hope to find in Addis Ababa? Not asked. The very latest attack occurred on the Sudan border in the Gambela National Park. Not only is there a police detective there willing to speak to us, but they also have a survivor there. Maybe he can fill in the missing pieces of our puzzle, Thor enthused. That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Plato Wyngard and the Armour of the Gods has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quills books, where the next chapter awaits, whispering secrets yet untold.